Wow! Mga kameta, kamusta kayo dyan? May nanalo na naman ng opposition. Isa pa naman elections at may isa pa na naman na opposition na nanalo. Another electoral shock against these authoritarian conservative forces around the world. Nanalo na po. Ito na si ANWAR. No, si ANWAR. Si ANWAR Ibrahim, yung matagal na opposition leader ng Malaysia. Itong tao ay pinakulong kung anong kabastusan ng sinabi sa kanya, na napakulong pa siya ng sodomy charges, marami siyang kaaway. Grabe, ang dami niyang nadaanan. Ilan beses siya natalo sa elections. Since late 2000s pa siya tumatakbo for prime ministers, and parating either nadadayaan siya, or at least that's allegations, or na-gerrymander siya. But ito na guys, eventually, ito na, nanalo na yung opposition ng Malaysia. Si Anwar Ibrahim po ang magiging new Prime Minister ng Malaysia. Yun, no? Boom! Wow, that was not expected, guys. That was not expected. Yes, it is true na yung Pakatan Harapan na party niya was able to be part of the ruling administration a few years ago. But back then, it was Prime Minister Mahathir, not necessarily the most liberal leader, who was actually leading the coalition. But this time, it's no less than Anwar himself who will lead the opposition dito sa Malaysia. And para sa atin mga kameta, ito, mahalaga yan because we're seeing a wave, no? We're seeing a wave, a progressive wave all across the world, no? Ayan, naghang tayo, baka may nagalit sa atin. We're seeing a kind of a progressive opposition wave, no? Across the world, no? So unang-una nakita natin sa Brazil po, natalo si Bolsonaro, Jair Bolsonaro, yung kanilang Trump tatay style na presidente, although of course by a slight margin nonetheless, it was enough. You had millions of extra votes for Bolsonaro. Millions of extra votes for Lula. And Lula was eventually able to pressure Bolsonaro to give up, no? At hindi niya pilitan Trump style na siya yung nanalo. And then dito guys, meron tayong case naman dito sa Amerika kung saan sa midterm elections bugbog yung mga pinaka-allies, loyalista, mga sidekicks ni Trump, no? At si Biden ended up having the best performance by any Democratic administration since JFK, at least as far as midterm elections are concerned. And eto na guys, ito yung shocking kasi until recently guys, hindi natin alam kung sino magiging next government ng Malaysia kasi yung kanilang Trapo party, diba, called for an elections thinking that can easily dominate it and get a larger mandate. But what happened was actually na shalak sila, no? So two parties emerged as very powerful. One was Anwar's party, PH, which is much more progressive, much more liberal than all of the other major parties, and the other one was the more conservative Islamist party, no? But eventually what happened is that nagsama ang mga dalawang karibal dati, no? Long-time enemies dati, to form the new government right now. And now it's confirmed that the King of Malaysia has designated Anwar Ibrahim to be the next Prime Minister of Malaysia. Now, to tell you something interesting about Anwar Ibrahim, of course, I mean, no one is perfect. He has a controversial past. At some point, he thought he's going to be the heir apparent of Mahathir, and then there was a fallout. Then there were the sodomy charges. He comes out, he runs again, this time naman against another protege of Mahathir. I'm talking about si Najib who's now nasa kulungan dahil sa corruption cases. But again, na sodomy charge siya, nakulong na naman siya. Like, I mean, what's going on with this country and all of these sodomy charges, no? But still, bumalik siya. Palaban siya, balik siya ng balik. Talo, balik. But every time that even when he was losing, he was building a strong movement. Every time he was losing, he was showing his convictions and determination. Every time he was losing, he was still showing that vulnerable at pwede talunin yung kalaban nila. It was that persistence and perseverance. Kinulong siya, kinawawa siya, binastos siya, lahat ginawa sa kanya, no? Marginalized siya, dinayaan siya, na-gerrymandered siya. Everything was done against Anwar, but he kept on going. Hindi siya yung purong reklamo, hindi siya purong whining, hindi siya purong Google Trends, hindi siya purong, ay, kawawa naman tayo, na fake news na tayo. Siya na nga, kinulong siya on like crazy charges, like sodomy, whatever, right? twice siya na kasuhan ng Sodom. I mean, what Anwar had to go through to reach this point, this long march to freedom, to power that he has experienced. Like, wow, what a comeback. Grabe, guys, it's incomparable to almost anything that the opposition leaders in the Philippines have experienced. The only one I can think of as close to that is Senator Leila de Lima. Now, imagine the case of Anwar. He's been fighting since for the past 2 decades for this. No? So, grabe yung nangyari sa kanya. And yet, ito na, Anwar will soon be the prime minister. Now, ito yung interesting, guys. One of the things that caught my attention with Anwar, of course, I mean, I know a lot about him. I have a lot of contacts in Malaysia, etc. Wala naman perfectong tao, no? At some point, everyone is an opportunistic politician one way or another. But I admire the persistence and perseverance. But one other thing interesting is, I remember around 10 years ago when I would meet progressive Malaysians, and I actually read an article kung saan Anwar Ibrahim was actually citing Benigno Aquino, si Pinoy, yung binabastos sa Pilipinas ng mga trolls. Si Pinoy na sinisisi sa lahat ng problema ng Pilipinas, although 6 years lang siya president, and actually the Philippine economy vastly improved under his watch. Corruption was contained at least under his watch, pero binabastos pa rin siya, sinisisi siya for everything. I mean, my goodness. Actually, si Anwar cited Aquino as one of his inspirations. Cited the Philippines democratic reform as one of his inspirations for pushing for his own version of freedom and democracy in Malaysia, which has been controlled for a very long time by Barisan Nasional, the conservative reactionary coalition, for a very long time. The only time na natalo sila was when Mahathir, one of their own, was able to beat them, but Mahathir was never really full-fledged opposition, right? All due respect to him. Anwar became the opposition, de facto the opposition, since he was purged by Mahathir in the late 1990s, no? So, grabe, guys. Ito. Si Anwar na iniidolo sila Aquino at Pilipinas, ngayon maging Prime Minister ng Malaysia. At si Anwar na nakulong, binastos, na fake news, na gerrymander, na dinayaan. I mean, grabe, tingnan mo yung mga videos ng mga, not the previous election 2018, but previous to that, no? No, actually 2018 pa rin. Makikita mo yung mga clips kung saan Najib was allegedly essentially saying, scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. No? Talagang open bribery almost ang sinasabi niya. Against all the odds. Against all the odds, no? Anwar Ibrahim never gave up. He never gave up. He never gave up. Palaban talaga siya eh. Yan ang ayoko dito sa Pilipinas, sa atin sa Pilipinas. Hindi natin pinapansin yung mga nangyari sa paligid natin. Gusto lang natin tignan yung sa Amerika, I don't know, sa Europe, etc. But if you really pay attention to what's happening in our own neighborhood, there are many inspirational leaders, including si Jokowi dito sa Indonesia, who I think has done a very good job. I think Vico Soto one day could be like our Jokowi of the Philippines, no? Isko could have been, but mahabang usapan na yun. Let's not go there for now. Mayor Magalong is kind of a version of Jokowi, I could say, quite confidently. But ito guys, ito talaga mga kameta, ito yung nakakairita sa atin. Yung parang, natalo yung kandidato mo ng isang beses, nag-give up ka na, wala nang pag-asa ng Pilipinas, alis na tayo dito, wala na, finish na, blah blah blah. Tapos purong whining, purong i-Google Trends, purong gano'n. Kung ganyan si Anwar, wala nang pag-asa yung bansa nila. I mean, the painful thing about Malaysia was that even though they economically did well over the past 20-30 years, of course, smaller population, 1/3 of the Philippines, a lot of oil, a lot of resources, including sa Sabah na dapat sa atin sa Pilipinas. Pero ibang usapan yan, matagal na usapan yan. Despite everything, Malaysia had a very backward political structure. Their political system was extremely parochial, tribalistic, and super corrupt. Kung tignan mo yung corruption case under Najib, my goodness, yung ano ni Imelda na 3,000 shoes, walang laban yan dun sa asawa ni Najib na mga Hermes na nakailan hundreds na yung Hermes na yung mga luxury items, etc. Grabe yung corruption in Malaysia. So their middle class was very frustrated. And actually, throughout 3 elections consistently from late 2000 onwards, yung middle class ng Malaysia, yung progressives ng Malaysia kept on voting against Barisan Nasional. Right? Omno, Barisan Nasional. But they lost because they couldn't win because na-gerrymander yung mga distrito. So lahat yung mga progressive opposition, kahit marami kinukumpul sila sa maliit na isang district lang, so isa lang kunyari yung parliamentary seat, Tapos mga limang mga more rural areas na conservative, ginawang tatlong district. So even if you win fewer votes here, dahil sa gerrymandering, you get more parliamentary seats. And the party with the most parliamentary seat, of course, is in a position to become the next governing body. So they did all sorts of shenanigans, no? And grabing corruption, di ba? Yan, alam niyo, di ba, naging malaking issue yan, yung kay Jolo ba yan? Yung ano, yung nag-fund ng Wolf of Wall Street, ganun. Tapos yung 1 MDB scandal sa Malaysia na naging libro na yan, yung The Big Whale. Billions of dollars ang ninakawan, base sa mga reports. Kaya nga nakulong si Najib, di ba? Na sobrang talagang lantaran na corruption, no? Next level style, di ba? Um, but people didn't give up. But people didn't give up. Even after yung pagkataharapan nag fall apart yung opposition coalition ni Mahathir and sila Anwar dun sa 2018 to 2019, even if that thing fell apart, they still didn't give up. They still fought. They still came back. They still mobilized. They still hope for the best, no? And even if dito sa elections actually almost hung parliament because two parties almost got the same number of votes, right? Ito yung mga Islamists, and then ito yung mga Anwar party, no, PH. And yet they didn't give up. And they were also able to build coalitions, so much so that Anwar was able to team up with his former rivals and enemies, no? To build a new coalition, a governing coalition, and to finally give Malaysia a chance to be a genuine democracy for the foreseeable future. Now, finally, Malaysia has a chance because Malaysia has been economically doing well for quite some time, but in terms of their politics, etc., pluralism, they were behind countries like Indonesia and the Philippines, right? But now there's a chance. At yun ang parati ko sinasabi. Instead of just giving up on our country, instead of saying wala ng pag-asa, look at our neighbors. Look at some of, and I'm not talking about economics of our neighbors. I'm talking about the political struggles of our neighbors. I'm talking about the democratic struggles of our neighbors. And look at what they were able to achieve by persistence. By persistence. Hindi yung whining. Hindi yung ayoko na sa Pilipinas, alis na tayo, wala ng pag-asa. I mean, imagine if Malaysians were like that. They gave up 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Imagine if yung social base ni Anwar, no, gave up. Because puro na lang no, Barisan National yan for 60 years, no, and more. What if they give up and say, napaka-corrupt? They didn't. They stayed, most of them stayed, most of them fought, most of them mobilized, and now finally there's a chance. Again, there's no assurance. Malaysia is a crazy politics. Things could still fall apart. We don't know what's gonna happen next, no? The conservatives, the ultra-conservatives also did very well in these elections, no? But at least there's a chance right now for progressive liberal forces in Malaysia to finally have a working coalition that is led by someone who has proven in the past 10, 15, 20 years that he is committed, fully committed to a different vision of Malaysia, to a different vision of Malaysia. Yun ang parati ko sinasabi. Hindi pwede snowflakes. Hindi pwede yung fragile. Hindi pwede yung isang talo lang, give up na. Hindi pwede yung anong konting ganyan na, wala na. Hindi pwede yan. When you're fighting for democracy against all odds, when you're fighting for progressive values against reactionary forces, ultra-conservative forces, you have to be brave. You have to have conviction. You have to keep on going. And you should make sure you're not gonna give up even after many, many setbacks. I mean, ilan elections na natalo si Anwar. And yet, he's kept on going. He kept on going. And boom, the day has arrived when he's the Prime Minister now of Malaysia. Let's see. Again, there's no assurance this will work. Let's see what's gonna happen. Malaysia is a crazy politics, etc. But guys, come on. Sana naman. We learn a lesson or two. Basta yung pinaka-interesting sa akin, guys, balikan natin later on as we get more updates on Malaysia, is actually iniidolo niya, no? Si Aquino. I mean, that's really something. That's really something. Na someone who looked up to the Aquinos in the Philippines, someone who looked up to the democratic struggle in the Philippines, is now the leader of Malaysia. And then yung mga ibang nandito na mga ignoramos, gusto nila yung authoritarian, conservative, trapo style na, ano? Come on. Ay nako. Ayan tayo dyan. Oh, by the way, of course, I mean, this political shock just came after, of course, another World Cup shocker. Japan beating, sabi ko nga paano naman matalo kung ganyan ang Japan team, di ba? Tingnan mo naman yung Japan team, di ba? Kung ganyan yung team mo, hindi talaga matatalo yan. So natalo nila yung Cute talaga nung anime nung Japanese team. Uy, manggaling talaga ang Japan. And I'm hoping Korea will do well also later. Today ba yan? Today yata yung laro ng Korea, di ba? And I hope that other Asian teams, yung iba na hindi magandang first game nila, makabawi sila. Especially Qatar and Iran, no? And let's hope that Saudi Arabia also continues what it has been doing and be a little bit more consistent that it has usually been. Grabe yung sa Japan, no? Very interesting. So, ito yung sa Shibuya District kagabi, oh, nagwawala yung mga tao. Masaya yung mga taga Shibuya. Ayun, no? Wow! Ito na. Ito na yung mga Japanese, very disciplined. Kahit na natutuwa sila, disciplined sila. Oh. Tapos mamaya, tingnan mo, babalik sila ngayon. Tatawagin sila ng traffic enforcer, tapos babalik na naman sila. Kasi grabe, natatalo sila ng 1-0. In the last 15 minutes, nakadalawang goal in Japan. I mean, come on, that was really impressive. That was really impressive. Di sila nag-give up. I mean, everyone's thinking, and Germany has not lost a game where they were leading since 1994, if I'm not mistaken, right? So that was, the odds were really against Japan at the third quarter of the game, and yet Japan came back. And yung isang goal nila from closed angle, I mean, wow, very very impressive, very very impressive. Ayan, kaya tuloy Japan sagot sa ano. Yan, 'di ba? Kung ganyan ang team mo, di ka talaga matatalo. Yan ang Team Japan. O, di ba? Talagang di kayo matatalo. Ganyan ang team niyo, di ba? Mga kameta, the best talaga. So, medyo confident ako Japan can make it to the next round. And then I think two other Asian teams can also make it. No, let's see if Saudi Arabia can maintain it. Pero ang sense ko talaga, three Asian teams can make it to the round of 16, which would, I think, be the best ever performance by Asian teams. I think the last time we had a performance like that, at least two Asian teams making it to the next round. I think that was Japan and Korea. But that was the time when Japan and Korea were hosting the Olympics. So we usually do very well when Asians host the World Cup. So definitely there's that element, no? So let's see. Let's hope for the best and support tayo. And let's not forget, Philippines also has a World Cup team. Although not in this edition, but in the women edition. At parati ko sinisabi, guys, nakita niyo naman, ang tatangkad, ang lalaki ng mga Aleman. Pero nakayanan sila ng mga Hapon. Because football doesn't need height. The same way that basketball needs height. Let's be very brutally honest about it. When you're at the highest level, height is everything when it comes to basketball and the physicality. And the Japanese prove that when it comes to football, you may be the smaller team, right? But you can come out because of speed and discipline and strategy, right? The Japanese were able to beat the Germans, right? Coming from behind, last 15 minutes, 2-1. Kayang-kaya yan. Kaya nga sabi ko I mean, Japan shows us football would have done much more magic for us Filipinos rather than basketball, to be honest about it. And sana, more and more countries also emulate what Japan has been doing, which is, tingnan nyo naman guys, after every game, yung mga Japanese audience, linisan nila yung stadium. Even yung mga games na wala yung Japan, they'll still go there and try to clean up the place. So, I mean, amazing. The kind of discipline, the diligence, politeness that the Japanese people have. They make us Asians proud. And I hope we make them also proud by I don't know, performing well in World Cup among other things. Alright? Okay, I'll keep it there guys. Back tayo sa other applications natin sa buhay. Maraming salamat. Talk to you soon. Ay, wait lang. Hindi pa tayo nag-thank you sa mga ano. Thank you pala tayo sa mga sumusuporta sa atin. Sabi ko parang may kulang eh. Masyadong excited. Ayan, as usual, of course. Sila Ma'am Jocelyn Lumberi, as always, thank you very much for your support. Kay Riz Ani, as always. Kay Maria Emerald Gasataya, thank you very much. Thank you so much for stickers and support. Salamat kay Eleanor Bangayan for joining us. Magandang hapon din po. Salamat din kay Soronces JC, kay Helen C, and kay Rina watching us from Cebu. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much. Ayan, basta guys, go lang tayo. Ano naman, narinig ko na naman yung mga pa-excuse. Guys, natalong opposition last elections. Nagsama yung dalawang Duterte and Marcos House. Walang laban yan. That tells you coalition building is very, very important. Now, if you want to make it all about SD cards, I'm sorry. You believe Google Trends, right? Over all of the scientific surveys, including by Pulse Asia, including by SWS, etc. I'm sorry, all of them were showing what was going to happen. I kept on telling you guys, you're not listening. Gusto niyo makinig dun sa Google Trends, yung mga economists, data scientists, whatever na purong mga kaeng-eng ang sinasabi nila. Those people have no business making any political analysis. They should have been disqualified for good. Ang yayabang pa nila ngayon. But, wag na. Good vibes tayo ngayon. Good vibes tayo ngayon. So I hope people check what's happening there in Malaysia. Check what happened in the US, in Brazil, all around the world when progressive opposition stopped whining, studied the situation as it is, got good strategies, got good communications, and finally made it. And if kaya nila, siguro kaya din natin. But we have to have the right mindset and stop whining and stop Google trending and stop listening to nonsense people pretending to be data scientists, experts, whatever. Alright? Maraming salamat. Thank you very much and talk to you soon.